Good day, learners! In this video, we are going to get to know more about the special parallelograms, particularly the properties involving their diagonals. The first properties involving diagonals of a special parallelogram states that in a rectangle and square, the diagonals are congruent. Suppose we have parallelogram dark. If the diagonals TR and AK are congruent, we can say that the parallelogram is a rectangle or a square. Take note that when we say congruent, this means that the parts are equal or have the same measure. The second property states that in a rhombus and square, each diagonals bisect opposite angles. We all know that opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent. Thus, if the diagonal bisect these opposite angles, meaning the angles are divided into two equal parts, then we can conclude that the parallelogram is a rhombus or a square. For example, we have parallelogram care. The diagonal RC divides angle R and angle C into four congruent angles: angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. Likewise, diagonal EA divides angle A and angle E into four congruent angles: angle 5, angle 6, angle 7, and angle 8. Thus, we can say that parallelogram care is a rhombus or a square. The third property states that in a rhombus and square, each of the diagonals are perpendicular to each other. Note that when we say perpendicular, these are lines, segments, or rays that intersect and forms a right angle. If the diagonals intersect and forms 90-degree angles, then the parallelogram is either a rhombus or a square. For example, in this figure, line segment AE and line segment RC are perpendicular. Therefore, we can say that it is a rhombus or a square. Take note that the symbol for perpendicular lines is an inverted capital letter T. We all know that in a parallelogram, the diagonals divide the parallelogram into two congruent triangles. These triangles could be isosceles or scalene triangles. When we say isosceles triangles, these are triangles having two equal sides, while scalene triangles has no equal sides. In this figure, line segment AL divides the parallelogram GALE into two congruent triangles, triangle GAL and triangle AIL, and they are both isosceles right triangles. When we say isosceles right triangles, it is also known as the 45-45 90-degree triangle. It is a triangle whose legs are congruent and has a right angle. In a square, each diagonals form two congruent isosceles right triangle. Therefore, we can say that parallelogram GALE is a square. Let us take note of the following properties or characteristics of a rectangle. Number 1. Opposite sides are parallel and congruent. Number 2. Opposite angles are congruent and supplementary. Number 3. All four angles are right angles. 4. Consecutive angles are supplementary. 5. Diagonals bisect each other and are congruent. Number 6. Each diagonal separates the rectangle into two congruent triangles. On the other hand, the following are the characteristics of a rhombus. Number 1, all four sides are congruent. Next, opposite sides are parallel. Third one, opposite angles are congruent. Number 4, consecutive angles are supplementary. 5, diagonals bisect each other and are perpendicular. Number 6, each diagonal bisects a pair of opposite angles. And number 7, each diagonal separates the rhombus into two congruent scalene triangles. And finally, since the square is both a rectangle and a rhombus, it has the following characteristics. First, all four sides are congruent. Second, all four angles are right angles. Third, opposite sides are parallel and congruent. Fourth, opposite angles are congruent and supplementary. Fifth, consecutive angles are supplementary and congruent. Sixth, diagonals bisect each other and are perpendicular and congruent. And lastly, each diagonal separates the square into two congruent isosceles right triangle or 45-45-90-degree triangle. That ends our lesson for this video. I hope that you learn and helps you a lot in understanding special parallelograms. Thank you and God bless. Happy learning!